Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is September 23rd, and right now we are looking at the infrared satellite imagery. Here's BC, Washington, Oregon, atmospheric stream or creek, if you will. We're not going to call this an atmospheric river by any means. Going to bring some light precipitation across the region, maybe down into western Washington a bit. And in the wake of this system, we're going to turn things back offshore, build a ridge over the area, warm up this week and on into early next week. And then we'll watch for the potential for a system after that ridge and warm weather coming through later, mid, and later next week here coming up. You can see the upper level low that was spinning off the coast of California and now tracking across eastern Montana, across the Dakotas here as well. Out of our life here for the Pacific Northwest. Now, taking a look here quickly, this is the GO 16. You can see major Hurricane Fiona out here, well-developed eye. This is now interacting with a trough. It's going to bring it across Nova Scotia and up towards Greenland. You can already see the heat transfer towards the poles of this system. It's going to remain a major hurricane to about here. Warm water exists to about that point. Then it's going to go through an extratropical transition as it moves across land here. Very impressive storm out there. If you're watching social media and you type in Fiona, you're going to hear a lot about this storm coming up here. And then there's a potential for another tropical system moving across Cuba into the Gulf of Mexico, or perhaps across Florida through the extended as well. You're going to hear a lot about that also. So here's that map. You can see major hurricane status here, then the hurricane here, and hurricane warnings are up for the area. And then as it goes through its extratropical transition up towards Greenland on through the extended there. Now back to the Pacific Northwest, here's Spokane, dry and mild fall weather this weekend and next week. That does bring the potential for some overnight and morning fog though, so we'll watch out for that. And here we go for Seattle, 70 degrees, right around average here. And what we're going to look for here is on the 26th. Look at this, 78 is the record high. We're forecast to be about 79 or 80, so we could break that all-time daily record high. Granted, it is a low. It's the only temperature record high in September that is not 80 plus, so kind of low-hanging fruit there, but let's see if we can break that one. Now, this is the air quality index here at my house. You can see how much it has improved here over the last couple of days. But not to be the bearer of bad news, we may start introducing some smoke back here into western Washington as we're going to turn the flow offshore again as we warm up this weekend into next week. So an example of that is shown here. Here's the westerly flow across eastern Washington, Oregon. Onshore flow strong across BC, western Washington, Oregon as well. As we go on into Friday afternoon here, by tonight and into tomorrow morning, you'll notice how we now have kind of a northeasterly component across western Washington, and we start to bring this flow all the way down across the Willamette Valley here through on into Sunday morning. Now you can plainly see that easterly component here across eastern Washington, eastern Oregon, across some of BC here. Still kind of squirrely winds at the upper elevations here. But now as we go on into Monday morning, you can see this continuing to be an eastern component here. So anything over the Cascades here, BC is going to start to flow out across western Washington, potentially western Oregon there too as well. If the Cedar Creek fire is still smoldering or fires up again, I'm not sure how that's doing right now. It doesn't look like it's producing too much smoke as we speak. But you can see this offshore flow kind of continues all the way in through Tuesday morning here, still easterly component. But notice this system kind of chugging our way here. By the time Wednesday comes, we turn the flow back onshore and maybe even bring some precip in a system across the region here. We'll check out what the models and ensembles say about that here coming up shortly. Now, taking a look here, dynamic tropopause. You can see Fiona out here. Look at that eye out here, just a huge mass of energy moving northward. It starts to interact with a trough, and you can see it go through extratropical transition here. As it's crossing Nova Scotia. Very impressive storm. But in the meantime, you can see our ridge building here across the Pacific Northwest, and this next trough would be the weather maker here coming up through midweek. Let's see if this thing can swing all the way through into the Pacific Northwest and finally bring us a system and some precipitation as we go through very late September here across the region. Now, taking a look at 925 millibar temperatures, this is current. You can see that system kind of sliding by here, but then we start to bounce back as we go through Saturday. Some warmth starts to extend out into western Washington, western BC, and really quite warm aloft down through southeast Oregon as well. Now, as we go on in through Monday, probably the warmest day here and the greatest extent of this heat aloft, here comes that trough starting to swing our way here, and you can see this heat push off mainly eastern Washington, Oregon on the day Wednesday. Cooler air does arrive, though, by mid and later next week, however. And then you can see potentially another system here as the Gulf of Alaska troughing could get going here through the extended. But again, getting a little bit ahead of ourselves there. Now this, I wanted to show you 24-hour precipitation running total here, so you can kind of see the BC getting a bit of precipitation as we go through. This will be ending Friday afternoon. So as we go through, this is ending Saturday afternoon. You can kind of see that very weak atmospheric feature here rolling through the Queen Charlotte Islands, the west coast of BC here, north of Vancouver Island for the most part. And then we dry out, as you can see, through this week and early next week before this next system tries to make a run at us here. Let's see what the GFS says about that as well. We'll see what the ensembles say before we get too caught up in that extended system there. Now looking at the European on the left, GFS on the right, there's Fiona there. There's our upper level low that was off the coast of California across Montana now. And we put this into motion. You'll see the ridge building here for us in the Pacific Northwest. Pretty good model agreement there. Looks like the main part of the ridge is down towards eastern Oregon and over Idaho here. But a nice ridge does build across the area. But you notice it doesn't hang out long. And that's kind of a feature of these ridges this time of year. They don't hang out long. They're fairly transient. You know, the heat wave portion of our season is generally gone at this point. So you see it quickly moves off. So a couple warm days across the region, and the GFS and the European both bring a trough close by and maybe a system into Vancouver Island on the GFS, a little bit further south on the European. We'll be able to iron out those details as we get closer here. And on through the extended, you can kind of see the GFS more progressive with the trough there. European hanging it out off the coast a bit more, but we're getting way out over 200 hours at this point. But looking at Seattle here, 26, there it is. Looks like 81 maybe here on that Monday coming up here, and the record high is 78. So decent chance to beat that record high there. One more warm day on Tuesday before we drop back down to more seasonable temperatures as we go through mid and later next week. Spokane, you can see that bump in heat before we drop back down through the extended as well. So yeah, if you guys like the warmth, you know, you're getting another few days here as we go through early this weekend and early next week. Kamloops off in eastern BC, maybe some upper 70s possible on Tuesday here before we drop back down on through the extended forecast as well. Not a lot of stock in the extended at this point, though. And you can see Portland, kind of a hot spot here, showing up here for Monday, potentially upper 80s on Sunday and Monday for a bit of a cool down as we go through Tuesday. And then, of course, as that trough moves closer mid and later next week, we would cool down quite a bit. Now, this is something here on the European. This is probability of 2 meter temperatures over or equal to 80 degrees here. Now, as we roll through on into Sunday, you can see that pretty good 90% chance there at Portland for an 80-degree day. Columbia Basin as well. Really not much of a chance for Western Washington, but you can just kind of tell by this proximity of these readings here that we're going to be up into the 70s here for Western Washington. Now, as we go on into Monday, check that out. You start to introduce these probabilities up into the Puget Sound, west slopes of the Cascades, Columbia Basin, and virtually a lock for an 80-degree day here on Monday for a lot of the Willamette Valley up into Portland, southwest Washington. And then on Tuesday, you can see a bit of a chance for an 80-degree day all the way up mainly Seattle south across Portland, eastern Washington, eastern Oregon, California, of course, as well. So it's just another one of the many tools we have here to kind of predict temperatures. So basically, if we back this up and if we look at over 70, let's go ahead and go to Monday. You can see the chances of a 70-degree plus day here exist for much of the region, and then you can do for 80, 90, whatever. So if we go to 90 real quickly, look at Monday. There's a little bit of a chance that Portland could hit 90 on Monday. Let's see if any other days, maybe a blip on Sunday. But generally, Monday looks like it's going to be the warmest day. But as you go through on into Wednesday, even some portions of Columbia Basin could get a 90-degree day there as well. But just another tool that I wanted to show you guys there briefly. Klamath Regional Airport here, you can see the warm-up coming through this weekend and early next week for more seasonal temperatures. Look like they're coming through the extended. This is Quilly, a little bit of precipitation possible through this afternoon and tonight. You can see maybe a tenth of an inch or two. And then you can see some potential for wet systems coming in here mid and later this week here, as you saw the GFS and the European do swing a system nearby here. So we do start to introduce that chance for it. And you can see the control run gets kind of wonky here in the end. You see the difference between some of the ensemble runs and the general mean here versus the control. So anything we're looking at right now is not set in stone by any mean. It's very chaotic as we get out towards the end of September here. So we'll just continue to watch at this point. You can see Seattle, Tacoma, maybe a few hundredths of an inch of rain expected tonight if we're lucky. And then the potential for a system, though, later next week does exist, as you can see there. Fantasy windstorm hunting at this point, there's a couple smatterings of 40, but nothing to even think about at this point, really. Now, the GFS does the same thing also. You can see it has 30 ensemble members here, and actually number 6 here, kind of a little potent storm here way out in Fantasyland on October 8th, just entertainment purposes only, just like, you know. In fact, the other model run that I have doesn't even go out that far, so we can't even look at it if we wanted to at this point here on the 06Z, but just kind of entertainment only in the fantasy land here. Now, check this out on the drought monitor here. We do have abnormally dry has been introduced mainly Portland north through western Washington all the way up to the coastline, and that S there, that denotes short term, so that is expected to end, of course, as it will probably sometime in October when we get systems rolling through here, and definitely by November, but it's just kind of highlighting that we are in an abnormally dry period. A couple little drought portions here do exist for eastern Washington. Let's go ahead and zoom in on that. You can see the exceptional drought still for portions of the eastern slopes of the Cascades for Oregon as well. A little bit of moderate drought for eastern Washington, but there is still some extreme and severe drought for much of eastern Washington all the way down through the Cascades as well. And look at this exceptional drought still for portions of central and southern California here, also on in through Utah. And still some extreme drought out there through Montana as well. Some moderate and severe through Idaho as well. So just a look at the drought monitor here released yesterday, September 22nd. But anyway, yeah, so really the thing to highlight on is this ridge coming up, some nice warm days coming up across the region. Hopefully the forest fire smoke that does infiltrate western Washington or Oregon is not too bad up into BC. Just have to cross our fingers there. Maybe the fire, the smoke from these fires gets suppressed a little bit. We can put these fires out hopefully, but really no precipitation maker in the meantime before this warm up to kind of suppress those fires here. So the ridge coming, the potential system on in through later next week. We'll continue to watch that as we go here. We'll do this again tomorrow. Hope you guys are enjoying these videos. Thanks for signing up. Thanks for my supporting members. I'm very proud of you. Thank you for helping to support this page, and we will talk again tomorrow.